What is going on, guys and gals? Tyler here, and today I'm bringing you another Mortal Kombat topic video. And today's topic video is about the one, the only, the 3D era of Mortal Kombat. Deadly Alliance, Deception, Armageddon. No, I'm not talking about Marvel characters. I'm talking about the 3D era of Mortal Kombat. And when it comes to the 3D era, you either love it or you hate it. Personally, I love the 3D era. I mean, how could I not? As some of you may know, the first Mortal Kombat game that I ever played was Shaolin Monks, which came around the same time as the 3D era. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was smack dab in the middle of it. And the first real Mortal Kombat game from the main series that I ever played was Mortal Kombat Armageddon. I grew up playing Mortal Kombat Armageddon, and that is personally my favorite Mortal Kombat game of all time. And I also love Deception too, but it's at a lesser extent because Mortal Kombat Armageddon was what I played the most. I love the mini games, I love the characters, well, for the most part. I love just about everything about them. That being said, and with personal bias aside, are the 3D era games, at least in the main series, really all that great? Now, I'm making this video because of a frequent complaint that I get on my videos, with people saying stuff like, stop shitting on my childhood, the 3D era games are the best games in the... And that's why I'm making this video. When I make videos, unless they're centered around my opinion, I try to keep my personal bias out of the equation and look at these games from a quality standpoint, which is what I'm going to be doing right now. Like I said, the 3D era games were the ones that I grew up with, so along with Mortal Kombat 9 and Mortal Kombat X, they are my favorite games. But that does not make them the best ones from a quality standpoint. So to get this video started, let's start all the way back in Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance back in 2004, I believe. This was the first game in what I consider to be the 3D era, and you can count your lucky stars Mortal Kombat 4 because I'm saving you from this one. I'll be looking at these games with the good, the bad, and the verdict type strategy. And if you don't know what that is, that means I'll just be going over the good things first, then the bad things, and then my overall opinion on the game from an unbiased standpoint. Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance had a promising premise and made bold moves, such as killing off its main character in the opening cutscene. Seriously, they killed off Liu Kang in the opening cutscene. When have you ever seen any other game kill off its main character right when the game starts? Yeah, like I thought, not many. The Crypt was a novel feature that was reimagined across various titles, future and in the past of the Mortal Kombat franchise. And of course, the majority of the fatalities in this game were gruesome, gory, and very fun to watch. Now we move on to the bad, and holy crap, there was a lot of bad stuff about this game. And also, as you'll notice, a lot of the bad traits in one game will follow suit for the rest of them in the 3D era, so keep that in mind as we continue. The gameplay in Deadly Alliance is just, how do I put this, absolute crap. The 3D perspective was preferred for some gamers and was terrible for others, which really could have just been avoided if they had stuck with the original 2-dimensional fighter, or at least the 2.5-dimensional fighter. The new characters introduced, for the most part, were awful, and that's coming from one of Dramen's biggest supporters. Seriously, Li Mei is the best female character that we got there. Really? The Conquest Mode, which was a great idea in concept, failed terribly because of the entire game being a monotonous training mode. Seriously, Deadly Alliance's plot was so amazing, but the only way to really understand it is to just look up some transcripts online, which luckily was changed in future games. But for those of us back in the day in 2004 who didn't really have the best internet or didn't have access to it at the time, that meant we had to trudge through so many boring, and I mean boring missions just to figure out what the hell was going on. The arenas, for the most part, were unimaginative, and there wasn't too much interactability with any of them. Like I said, for the most part, I know there are some pretty cool ones in that game, but sorry, you gotta take your nostalgia shades off, a lot of them really were not that good. And interactability in arenas, yeah, that's been something that's been a part of Mortal Kombat since the game's conception back in the early 90s. My verdict for Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance is a 3 out of 10. In my opinion, the worst game in the 3D era. The next game on the list is arguably the best 3D era game, that being Mortal Kombat Deception. Mortal Kombat Deception introduced fan-favorite characters Kenshi and Havoc, who were two of the best things to come out of the 3D era. Chess combat and puzzle combat were both very fun to play, even if they did take some creative liberties when it comes to the original games, and the crypt was brought back and improved upon once again. Conquest Mode was a fully fleshed out sandbox game, which was so much fun, and although the main character was just boring and old and really not fun to play as, the mode itself was a whole lot of fun. There were secrets, you were taken to realms you had never heard of, and so much more. The fatalities were as gruesome as ever, and the arenas were all very cool, with the new implementation of brutal death traps that put previous games to shame. With the implementation of these death traps, matches became more unpredictable, as it could end at any point if some unlucky bastard was caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. It also implemented a bit of strategy, as you had to try and bait your opponent in and then knock him off the edge. Oh, that was my strategy growing up, and my friends hated me for it. However, it really wasn't all good for deception. The graphics were mediocre, even for an original Xbox and PlayStation 2 game, and the gameplay still had all the problems that the 3D setting brought with it. With the exceptions of Havoc and Kenshi, the new additions all sucked. Yes, I get it, Boraicho was kinda cool now, but back in the day he was absolute crap. Sadly, I mean that almost literally. I mean, come on, look at these additions. You got Cobra, who's just Ken from Street Fighter if Ken had no balls, Darius, who was just Blade from, well, Blade, the random thrown-in Black Dragon member Kira, and of course the aforementioned Boraicho. Although the Conquest Mode was very fun to play, the plot of the game just made everything confusing for a lot of fans. Akami Dogu? What the fuck is Akami Dogu? Said the majority of Mortal Kombat fans. Oh, they're just... Hey, look guys, it's Scorpion! Replied Ed Boon. My verdict for this game is a 6 out of 10. Easily the best 3D era main series game, and if I didn't have such a strong personal attachment to Armageddon, this would have probably been my favorite growing up. And now finally, we have what capped off the 3D era, Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Mortal Kombat Armageddon was an interesting concept. Every single fighter in the Mortal Kombat universe on one stage fighting for all the marbles. Every character, every move, everything was thrown in the game. The Mortal Kombat minigame was very fun to play, and Mortal Kombat Armageddon's creative combatant was loads of fun to make your new demon spawns with. Yeah, WWE 2K, actually the entire WWE franchise, taught me to make some pretty disgusting creatures, but this was the game that started it all. The Conquest Mode, although lacking that true sandbox aspect of the last game, was very fun to play too. The biggest problem with this game, however, is the gameplay itself. Because they tried to fit every character from every game in Armageddon, with the exception of the main characters like Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Raiden, nobody really felt all-too original. Every character had a similar moveset or strategy to another, and if they were totally unique, like some of the very few characters were, they were either unfair when played online or in combat, or overall useless otherwise. Like, why use Liu Kang when his default stance is terrible but his nunchucks are great, when you could just use Johnny Cage whose default stance was great and his nunchucks were just as good? And why use Meat, who was a wrestler, or when you could just use Smoke, who was a wrestler? Also, nobody really had their own unique fatalities because of there being so many characters. So Midway, or now known as NetherRealm Studios, tried to cover this up by branding what is now known as a Create a Fatality, which was really just an annoyance and failed on all fronts. The characters that they added in specifically for the game really all sucked too, with the exception of Dagon, who, yeah, I gotta admit, Dagon's pretty cool. Taven was just as boring as any other character from the past, like Shujinko. So yeah, he was pretty boring, and Blaze, well, as much as I personally love the fact that that little sprite in the background of Mortal Kombat 2's Pit became arguably the most important character in the timeline, that right there pisses a lot of people off, especially when he just became a huge lava monster, which I don't really agree with that either. So soon after the glitz and glamour of having every character in one game wore off, the flaws became increasingly noticeable, even to me as a kid. Like, how the graphics didn't improve at all since Deception, actually they worsened, and the fact that the gameplay just felt lazy. So, as much as I love the game, and believe me, I really do love Armageddon, from an unbiased standpoint, I realize that it just isn't a good game. Verdict, 4 out of 10. So that's my opinion on the 3D era games. It's pretty much a 3D era in review, I guess you could say. And I just made this video, like I said in the beginning, to clear up all these qualms that people had about me, saying that I hate the 3D era, that I didn't grow up with it, so I wouldn't understand. I grew up with the 3D era. Those games were my shit. Also, if you missed it in the beginning, I omitted Mortal Kombat 4, Mortal Kombat Gold, and I also omitted Shaolin Monks, because even though Shaolin Monks was in my version of the 3D era, it was just like a little side game. It was a spin-off. But let's just throw in for a second that Shaolin Monks was in the 3D era, since I know a lot of people are going to be asking about that. I'll just give it an 8 out of 10. It was a pretty amazing game that I'll get into detail with some other time. So what do you guys think about the 3D era? Leave it in the comment section down below, along with your heaps and bounds of dislikes and hate mail towards me. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and that's going to be very unlikely, because I can already tell the like-dislike ratio on this video is going to be huge in the dislikes favor, but whatever. And if you're new and don't want to kill me right now, be sure to subscribe. My name is Tyler, and I am out.